Hello, everybody. Welcome into the start of Week 3 of the Casual Sports Podcast. As always, I'm Alec, that's Matt, and that's Mike. Lots to talk about here. The NFL gave us a rather spectacular weekend. It's been full of ups and downs all year long, and this week was no shocker to that one. We've had so many things going the complete opposite ways that we thought they would. College football gave us some really big upsets, a few that we predicted and a few that we didn't. Yeah. Although there was a few that we maybe teased we thought would go a certain way, and they ended up going that way. Thank you, NC State. Georgia Tech also pulled off one big. We'll talk a few of those games later today and later this week on the show. For today's show, though, we're talking about the Chiefs-Chargers game, the Ravens versus the Lions. What a fantastic game that was. The Dolphins and the Raiders went to overtime. Dolphins with Jacoby Brissett instead of Tua time. You know, it was a good one there. The Vikings and the Seahawks. The Eagles-Cowboys tonight, Monday Night Football. We're going to talk some college football with that Clemson upset from NC State, who is now actually ranked above them in the top 25. Notre Dame's demolition of Wisconsin. The Arkansas Razorbacks cementing themselves as a top team in the SEC this season. And a few other headlines, including some Ohio State controversy, YSU's big upset there, and Cleveland's final home game. All that and more. Let's start things off with the question of the day for today. I'll actually give you the one from last Friday here. It was true or false. Former NBA player and coach Quinn Buckner also played college football. That was true. In your question for today, Monday, September 27th. Who all-time series between divisional rivals Green Bay and Detroit? Leave your comments here on the stream and see if you get it right, or just tune in back tomorrow and see if you get it right then. Either way, that's your question. Let's kick things off here. Chargers, Chiefs. It came down to that final quarter, and the Chargers dominated it. Outscored the Chiefs 16-7 in the final stat and won at 30-24. And Herbert put up a beauty, 26-38, 280 yards and 4 touchdowns.
You know how a couple weeks ago we were talking about new dynamic duos in the NFL? You gotta look at Justin Herbert and Mike Williams. He hooked up with him 7 times, 122 yards, 2 touchdowns. That guy has a great reach. He can reach over everybody. What a great addition.
And on the Chiefs side of things, turnovers continue to hurt them too. And you look at the box score. Sometimes they start out slow. Most games they play they start out slow, but you can make an argument maybe they can't flip that switch anymore. Maybe teams are starting. I'm not saying nobody is the Chiefs, but teams might be starting to figure some things out about them.
They're starting to figure out the no-look pass because they picked it off. They picked off and that no-look pass is usually unstoppable for Mahomes as well.
Well, one thing you look at this game, and it's becoming a big question mark for Kansas City, is Mike said getting off to a slow start. You look at the Browns game, they couldn't get things going early. You look at this game here, they only scored 3 points in that first half. Now, they had a better game against the Ravens, but still, this is a team that we're used to coming right out of the gate, and if you don't stop them early, you're not even going to be close to them in the end of the games. Well, now it seems like they can't score early in these games. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 100 rushing yards, so they finally found the rush game, but it didn't really seem to matter.
About time.
But it didn't really seem to matter in this game, having that rush game, because as we're mentioning here, only 3 points in that first half. They came out and won that third quarter that I love to talk about, but when you can't win anything in the first half, it doesn't really matter if you win that second half at all. In the first half, it was the Chargers' game. They outscored 14-3. Then you get the 14-0 run for the Chiefs in that second half to start out. But then they lose the fourth quarter and get demolished.
You gotta win that fourth quarter. That's a big quarter.
Right, the third quarter means nothing if you can't hold it in the fourth. Exactly. And they couldn't hold it. They took the third quarter, they took the lead, and then they blew it. They were capitalizing on the things we talk about, and then you get down to the final stretch and they completely forget how to play football. Defense falls apart. You guys have been talking about the defense looking poor, and I think this was their poorest performance out of all of them so far, because you're going up against a young Herbert who has struggled on the season so far. This is just their second win. They're 2-1, but he's been kind of up and down. He hasn't showed that hot season he had last year. Really came out of nowhere. It was like, it was Herbert. He was going to do okay. It was the Chargers. They weren't very good, and his numbers were, out of the park. He's returning a little bit of that here. The 4 touchdown performance for him. They didn't need the run game really to help him much. Austin Eckler got 55 yards on just 11 carries, so they did their job in that department. But the defense here for Kansas City, giving up 30 points in this game, and I mean, they had a good first quarter and a good third quarter, but they couldn't do anything else.
At home, too. I mean, you expect them to play a lot better at home. And I even mentioned the slow starts. I mean, like you said last week, they didn't start out. They started very well against the Ravens. They just couldn't. The defense couldn't finish that stuff out.
This tells you this right here. What you just said, the Kansas City defense, they were good in the first and third quarter. So they were good to start off the game, then got tired going in the halftime they get the break and come out, all that energy in them and do good. So they're good when they're full of energy, but it runs out.
That's kind of what we talk about with the offense going on and off the field so quickly and the amount they score. But it really wasn't that. A lot of this game yesterday, sudden change. The 2 interceptions that puts their defense right back out there and not giving them the full break that they're used to, or giving them that minute to prepare or whatever. Once you know that there's a punt coming and you have a minute to compose yourself, get your helmet on, get strapped up, tighten your laces, get a drink of Gatorade before going back out there. And instead now you have an interception, 30 seconds you're on the field and you have to be there because the team is going on the other side because they're trying to capitalize on momentum. And what did we say to do for Chiefs? Run the football. They ran the football, but now here came the interceptions and it ruined the run game.
Yeah. Kansas City got the ball. I think Kansas City got a turnover, and then came back. And Mahomes came right out and threw another one and gave the Chargers the ball right back. I'm like, Mahomes, what are you doing? What are you doing?
I mean, one was tipped. You can't. I mean, maybe you don't put it all on him, but there was one at the end of the game that was completely on him.
Yeah.
Because he tried to get it over the top to Kelsey, but it's just too much, and that was on him. Yeah. But that's a problem in this game.
Well, I think these next 4 weeks are going to be very telling for what this Chiefs team is going to be. They're taking on the Eagles in Philadelphia next week, and I'm liking Jalen Hurts. I like what they're putting together out there.
Right.
They may not be winning all the games or being the most spectacular performances, but they have something going there, and I like what's going on. Then they host the Bills, a Bills team that we've seen be pretty dangerous when they want to. I mean, they put up a lot of points this week. And obviously, week 1 against the Steelers. Steelers defense came in the end of that one and won it. That was a game the Bills offense had in hand for a long time in that game. Then after that, they're taking on a team that is becoming more of a question mark defensively. There's a lot of talks. This is a good defensive team. That's where their strength is. You look at the numbers aren't saying that really at this point in the season. It's Washington football team. They're kind of falling off even more so than they already were. And then they have the Titans in that 4th week in the next 4 games in Tennessee. Derrick Henry's a beast, and Tannehill just does what he has to do. So this is going to be a tough set for this Chiefs team, and I think it's really going to be a tell of what they're going to become here in this season. You look at the Chargers side of things, it's very hard for them. They host the Raiders and the Browns in back-to-back weeks. 2 offenses that we have seen be very explosive, and on the other side, defenses have been just as good right along with it. When you look at the Browns' performance yesterday on defense, granted it was against the Bears and what might be the worst offensive line in football.
And worst offensive game planning, too, that you might ever see, too.
Yeah, so, the Browns had more sacks that game than they've had all season, and Myles Garrett set the single-game sack record for Cleveland with 4.5.
Yeah.
And coming into this game, the Browns only had 3 sacks. He had 4.5 in the game, so...
And they had 9 total, so that's pretty dominant.
Yeah, they were all over him. It was bad. With that Raiders team, we've been talking Derek Carr every week here on the show. He's turning out so far this season. Then, of course, they have to go into Baltimore, take on the Ravens, and then they host the Patriots. And we don't know where the Patriots will be at that point with Mac Jones and their progression.
They're just
we've seen it up and down so far,
yeah.
And we've seen good games, we've seen bad. Year. So, by the time we get down to that point, that's what, week 7, 8? We're looking at a team, where are you going to be the rest of the season? This is the mark. So I think that's what, week 7, I think, week 6 or 7. So, we're getting down at that point in the season when they have to go take on the Patriots. We're going to find out what these teams really are.
Well, like you said, regardless, another week or so, we're going to be in the middle. We're approaching the middle of the season. Yeah. So, with both these teams, especially the Chiefs, because they got to find their rhythm back.
That's going to be some deciding games too, and that's going to really show their composure and what they're all about. Like you were saying, because when you go out and play these big teams, like you said, Baltimore and a couple of those other teams. That's where you're going to really find out how they can play and how good they are, and what they should do in the offseason, or who they should play more.
What they should do in the deadline.
Who should they play less?
We already had a trade today, actually.
Really?
Jaguars and I believe Panthers.
Oh, was that trade real? I thought that was like a proposed thing I saw.
No, I think that was a real trade. I think a 3rd rounder got sent to Carolina, 5th rounder got sent to Jacksonville. Jacksonville sent tight end. I don't remember what his name is. They sent one of their tight ends for an old corner, I think. I don't remember what the exact details of the trade was. If you want to know, though, go to Adam Schefter on Twitter. I'm sure it's there. I don't remember if I retweeted it or not, but, I think it's there. Next game up here on the slate from yesterday, a very exciting one, and one we didn't think was going to be this close. Jared Goff had a fantastic game, and the team followed suit, as they were just a field goal shy at the last second of defeating the Baltimore Ravens. But I think we need to give credit here to Lamar Jackson on that final drive, getting them from that long 4th and 19, moving it down the field, and getting into place fast. And I think all credit from this game, though, as much as I just said Lamar Jackson that final drive, without an NFL record-setting kick from Justin Tucker, they don't win this football game in the last second against now the 0-3 Lions.
That barely went in.
It went in, hit the crossbar.
Hit the crossbar, bounced right up and just fell back the last second. It was that photo finish moment. It's like if you're carving out something from a Disney Channel movie or whatever.
That's what it is.
For a football game, it's last second, it's and it's good!
It was like the Kawhi Leonard shot.
Exactly.
Bounce,
around. Bounce, in. Yeah. Basically, it was if the double doink had been a good thing.
It was a better version of it. It was
right, it was a single doink.
But
you see Goff looking.
Right, that would have been hilarious. But, this was a great game for Jared Goff in it. 22 of 30, 217 yards. No, he didn't have a touchdown, but that's where they found the ground game. DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, despite the fact that they only combined for 89 yards on 26 carries, they got 2 touchdowns on the ground. They capitalized in the red zone, and I'm sure they would love to get more touchdowns through the air. When you're looking at this game, what's the one improvement you can really look at and say, we would have won the game if this? If you get a passing touchdown. And Jared Goff, at some point, can you find some momentum through the air and you take the pressure off your defense in that fourth quarter?
Yeah, because like you said, in the rushing, it wasn't terrible. It could have been better, but in a close game like this, you'll take that, and you just, like you said, you need to get more out of your receivers.
They didn't have a one wide receiver crack over 70 yards. Just Khalif Raymond, who was at 68, and then their next leading wide receiver was the running back DeAndre Swift with 60. So you have to find wide receivers. We know that this is one of the worst wide receiver cores in football, and we've actually seen that quite a bit here in the early part of the season. They've had some good numbers, but they haven't shown any consistency from one guy. There doesn't seem to be any sort of rhythm towards this offense, and that's why they're 0-3.
I'll tell you what, though. Yeah. For as bad as production they got from the wide receiving core, they've been in most of these games they've been playing. Yeah. Their worst game was probably this past Monday night against the Packers. Other than that, they've been in games. They come back against the Niners in Week 1. They lose on a miracle field goal. A long-distance field goal, record-setting field goal by Tucker. So the Lions, there's some positives for them to look forward to.
That it is. And you know what? I think what they need to look for throughout this season before we hit the trade deadline is try and trade for a wide receiver at this point.
And see what happens.
You're 0-3 with no sign of looking any better. You have a good quarterback right now, and they've been able to say that for the last 10 years with Stafford and now Goff. Hey, we have a good quarterback. They can't put any guys around. You're getting a guy in DeAndre Swift who has now shown he's a multi-purpose back out of the backfield.
Yeah.
You have a defense that just held the Ravens to 19, a team that beat the Chiefs the week prior. So you're seeing all these good pieces. Let's try and put something together here and actually make a run in our division, see if we can make something of it.
Yeah.
The best receiver they had in those past 10 years was Megatron. And they need to find another one of those. They got some good tight ends. Hawkinson, and he only had 2 receptions. Get him.
Tight ends can only do so much if nobody else can get open.
They've had some good weapons throughout the years, but it just hasn't been all at once.
Right.
So that's been their problem. Like you said, if they play this tough and they can get some wins here before the trade deadline, why not do it? You don't have much to lose.
Right, and on the flip side of this, the Ravens had a pretty bad game thanks to that defense from the Lions. Lamar Jackson, had the good final drive, but 1 touchdown to 1 interception, 287 yards you'll take on just 16 catches, but he was only at about 50% pass completion, and that's not what you're looking for out of him. He was also their leading rusher, so you can almost blame a little bit of their struggles they're having right now on not having that running back. Yeah, they had Latavius Murray come in 7 times on carries, but we knew Lamar Jackson was going to be the running back here and the quarterback for them. He normally was anyways, but now they don't have any of the running backs that are all out with injuries. Even Ty Williams, who we saw have a big game, a few weeks ago, he didn't really do much either. This was a game that the leading wide receiver is Mark Andrews, 5 receptions for 109 yards. And then Sammy Watkins, a guy who's really coming up here with the Ravens after leaving the Chiefs, and he's pretty damn good there too. But now here on the Ravens,
Watkins got him in the field goal range.
Exactly, like they know he has great hands. They have a lot of great wide receivers here. Just a matter of getting it to them in the right spots.
Well, that was one of the main goals in the offseason, was loading up on weapons for Jackson to take the next step in his game.
And I think they did just that. It's just they get right there to the start of the season, and then injury bug, back-to-back running backs go down, and now they lost a key part of their game. When you're forcing Lamar Jackson to either be a pocket quarterback there and actually sit back there, which isn't his strong suit. He's best when he rolls out of the pocket and makes those linebackers and corners come up to the line of scrimmage and play him. It opens up the field behind him.
Exactly.
Now that he doesn't have a secondary running back to go to, his carries get more limited. So now he has to play more, protected, because if he goes down, this team is done. So now he has to play safe. He's got to be conservative. Right. And I think it's almost ruining the flow of this offense. Lamar can't be Lamar because they don't have a guy they can give it to if, he's, slowing down in a game or he's got an ankle sprain or something. He's got to stay more in the pocket. Now they can't run the ball, and he's not a pocket quarterback.
No, he's not. But he was better in the pocket yesterday, though. I noticed some stuff when I was watching highlights. I mean, he did what he had to do. I mean, as much as I hate to say that, I mean, he did pretty good in the pocket, almost 300 yards passing. He came out and did what he had to do, including that fire of a pass to Watkins to set up that 66-yard field goal.
Exactly.
So,
and next game here, we'll get into it. One that went to overtime, and I don't think any of us were really expecting it to be like this close, with the fact that there was no Tua time in Miami. This game was being played in Las Vegas. Overtime, Raiders take it with the last-second kick from Daniel Carlson.
Another one.
From 21 yards out, 31-28. And
Brissett can bring it.
Brissett, I mean, they saw it with the Colts. He was actually pretty good with that team up in Indy, but they obviously wanted to go a different direction and find a guy that they could rely on for, I think, a longer period of time. Because I don't think there was confidence Brissett could get it done year after year. Because he did show a little bit of not being able to do it week to week. You would have a great game here and then a bad game here, a mediocre game after that. There was no consistency from Brissett. And you kind of saw that here, 32 of 49. To bring in your backup quarterback and have him throw it 49 times, I think says a lot about the confidence that the Dolphins have in Brissett and maybe the lack of confidence they have in their rush game. I mean, they did give a lot of carries. They had, 27 total here between Gaskins, Brissett, and Brown. And Brown had one touchdown, Brissett had one touchdown, Gaskins led the team in rushing yards, just 65. But there just seems to be something with this Dolphins team. They're better than their stats look, but they're still not good. You know what I mean?
They're a team that I use often on the show. They're a weird team.
Right.
Because it's, like you said, the things look good, but it doesn't always result in wins.
Right. You look at 28 points and go, oh, that must be a good game.
Yeah.
14 came in the first quarter, and it was a 14-2 lead going into the second. They don't score in the second or the third quarter. They get completely blanked, outscored 17-0. Then you come out in the fourth quarter, and you put up 11 points, which is a very odd score in football to put up in a single quarter. It was a weird scoring football game. So,
I mean, you had a 14-2 score at the end of the first, but you see this with the Raiders. I mean, they've done this in many of their games so far this year. They pretty much start out slow, get themselves down, but with Derek Carr, they find ways to get back into the game and win games. That's why they're undefeated.
And, it wasn't Carr's best game. He did have the interception. There was, a lot of incompletions that game. He still had almost 400 yards, though, with 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And, man, they found the ground game with Peyton Barber, former product of Washington. 23 carries, 111 yards, and a touchdown for him. And, this was an important part of the team they needed to find out was who was going to be, the rushing back for this squad. And especially with Josh Jacobs dealing with the injury after last game. Clearly didn't play here tonight or last night. And they were able to rely on somebody else to get the job done, and that's what they were looking for. I mean, we've even seen Josh Jacobs struggle a little bit in the season to find the big lanes. And I think now that they can bring in Peyton Barber, maybe use it as a 1-2 back. We've seen a lot of success in the NFL recently with 1-2 running backs, bringing in 2 different guys to be able to run the football at any given time. You see it with Cleveland and, potentially here with the Raiders. There's a few other teams we've been talking about able to use a 2 running back system very efficiently.
Yeah, I mean, it's a luxury for teams to have.
This is a Raider. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Matt.
No, go ahead. Finish.
No, I was saying. I mean, it's a luxury for teams to have. You see with Cleveland. I mean, you all the other teams threw in. You can even say with Dallas. I mean, 2 running back systems work, but guys have to buy in to do it.
And this is a Raiders team. Last time they started off 3-0, they made it to the Super Bowl. So maybe that's a sign. And I want to talk about Brissett here. This is a guy
Didn't Carolina do the same thing last time they started 3-0?
Yeah.
So Raiders, Carolina.
Super Bowl.
Oh dear.
I'm down for it.
That'd be something, man.
We'll see.
But you had a point.
Yeah, Derek Carr will get hurt, then we'll see Nathan Peterman in the Super Bowl.
Nathan Peterman!
But Jacoby Brissett, this is a guy that sat behind Brady and even got a little bit of work with Andrew Luck. He knows his stuff. I'm sure he's learned some things from them, especially Brady, I'm sure. So he's good to come in as a backup and produce for a couple games. Like, he's a solid backup. But like you said, he was kind of off and on, inconsistent when he was starting at
That's what hurt him, yeah.
for the Colts. So
I
like him as a backup.
Well,
I really do.
We're going to get to see him here next 2 weeks as Tua on the IR, upcoming opponents. He gets to face his team, his former one in the Colts, and then after that, face the unstoppable Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Who were stopped?
Yeah, I mean, but still. 99% of the time, the Buccaneers are unstoppable.
Yeah.
It's that 1% of the time that they lose a game, and no one's going perfect this season. I don't think we're going to see that.
No.
We've already seen a few of the big teams, well, pretty much all the big teams fall, and any of these teams that are going undefeated, they have been close in these matchups so far. So I don't think anyone's going undefeated, and I think we finally reached a point in the NFL where we have a lot more balanced teams when it comes to our worst teams compared to our best teams. I think it's evening out a lot more.
Yeah, I definitely like it. I mean, it's...
Unless you're the Bears.
Or the Lions.
Hey, the Lions were close.
They were close.
We're the Giants.
It's not
We're the
resulting in
Giants.
wins.
Oh,
Both New York teams.
Giants.
Yeah.
You have yet to win a game either team, so...
that's okay. There was an interesting stat that came out. Both Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence have 7 interceptions on the season through their first 3 games. The last quarterback to do that through their first 3 games, Deshaun Kaiser with Cleveland. You
sent that.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Hopefully those 2 don't become the next biggest bust since
They will
Kaiser.
not be.
That was
Everybody needs to relax.
still low. Still
I know. It's something to just
Browns
like
went 0-16 that year. Now we have 2 teams that aren't doing anything good. You know, we'll find out here, but tough test for the Dolphins coming up, and the Raiders get the Chargers. So I mean, we already kind of talked about that game and how the Chargers are progressing. We know this Raiders team is good. They have a strong offense most of the time, a strong defense most of the time, and then they get the Bears after that. So that should be an easy win right there. So you can at least count them going 1-1 in these next 2 games if you're the Raiders.
I mean, that's what you bank on. I mean, you're 3-0. You want to keep it going,
right?
Sure.
All right, next game up here on the slate. One not so close, but Seattle Seahawks fell to the Minnesota Vikings. And Kirk Cousins, we've been talking about it first 2 weeks. He had great games. They couldn't do anything. He's now had 3 straight great games, and they finally capitalize on him. 30 of 38, 323 yards, and 3 touchdowns.
and it didn't look like they were going to win.
We called
at
it
first.
Friday. We were, this is going to be the game that they finally pull off and win.
I mean,
We just
Justin,
don't trust Seattle. You just
right.
Yeah.
Justin Jefferson, 118 yards and a touchdown. Tyler Conklin with 70 yards and a touchdown. Alexander Madison getting the carries with Dalvin Cook out, 112 yards for him. I mean, every facet of this game got together and held Seattle scoreless in the second half. That was the big part of this, because, I mean, this was a 17-21 game at the half that the Vikings were leading, and then this thing gets completely turned around in that second half. Vikings continue just to push on. They only scored 9, but they completely stopped Seattle.
Seattle's
going to get it going. I mean, he still had almost 300 yards passing.
He had an okay day.
Yeah.
Chris Carson on the ground broke off the big run. But
They
there
gotta
just
get him
seemed to be
going
no
more.
consistency with this offense. Yeah, obviously, to put up 17 points in that first half, you have to be doing something right on offense, and they were. It's just the second half. They couldn't continue that.
I mean, this definitely seems to be what Russell Wilson was talking about in the offseason. Like, hey, we need to change some things because it's not getting it done. You always talk about the last year or so, or maybe 2-3 years. They start out good, and then their offense just implodes. And their offense hasn't been anything special so far this year.
No.
And it's not going to get any easier for the Seahawks, as next week they get to head out to San Fran to take on the 49ers. Then they host the Rams. Then they go out to Pittsburgh to
They'll
take
win
on the
that
Steelers. Who knows? Both teams are struggling offensively. And then they host the Saints. So the next 4 weeks for these Seahawks, I mean, they need to turn this around quickly. They need to figure out what works on offense, and defense needs to step up as well. I mean, you're 1-2 in your first 3 games. In offense or defensively, coming off a game where you've allowed back-to-back games of 30 points to both the Titans and the Vikings here. I mean, it's not going to matter what the offense can produce if the defense doesn't stop.
You got to be able to stop people. It's the name of the game.
And for the Vikings,
defense wins championships.
They've had back-to-back close games, and now they get this one. They finally start pulling away. Now they have the Browns next week, and I think this is perhaps a trap game for Cleveland coming into this. You're like, oh, there's a one-win team who beat, a question mark in Seattle. They, lost to the Bengals. They lost to the Cardinals. Browns fans are riding the high that we know they do. I'm one of them. Every time we win a football game, it's like, woo, Cleveland into the Super Bowl! But it was the Bears, so I think the Browns are, at least the fan base is going to be riding this high, expecting a huge blowout win the Vikings, and I think if Kirk Cousins performs again, this is a game that potentially comes down to the wire again. I mean, we've seen it. Every time the Vikings are close in something, they're there, and they make you fight to the very end. And the question for the Browns is, can they fight to the very end? I mean, we saw it against the Chiefs. They were fighting there down to the end of it, but then they couldn't close out. Every team so far against the Vikings that has been close has been able to close out. Can the Browns do that? Because they haven't so far.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like you said with the Vikings, they're in these games. I mean, like you said, Cleveland can't come in imagining, just a one-win team. We can't just overlook them. They're in these games. So if they do something, like you said, slip up like the Kansas City game, they could be in for a tight game.
All right, well now Monday Night Football, the game everybody's been waiting for. Philadelphia Eagles at 1-1 taking on the 1-1 Dallas Cowboys tonight, 8:15. Mike, this is your game here. That's your team. Why don't you preview this one first, a little bit first off?
Well, so it's Dallas' home opener. They get to open up against their longtime division rivals. This is a sneaky rivalry. It's been a storied one that kind of gets overshadowed by some other ones. It's Dak's first game back at AT&T Stadium since that injury. So we'll see how if he plays and how he handles that. So both teams are 1-1 coming in. I mean, what do you guys expect?
I mean,
offense.
Hurts is rolling.
A lot of offense. I mean, you look at first two games, 32 points against the Falcons. Then they come out flat against the 49ers, only put up 11 points. I'm expecting a bounce-back game from Hurts. I want him over 250 yards, and I want touchdown-interception ratio 2-1. Yep. I think that's what they're looking for in this game going up against the Cowboys. Make that TD interception 2-1. They've got to get their ground game going, too, because you have to limit the amount of time the Cowboys' offense is on the field. So they've got to get Miles Sanders the ball more. He had 13 carries last time against the Niners, only 55 yards. He has got to bust through those holes a little bit more, and they need to give him more carries. And they need to find out a second running back. Because you're not going to be running Jalen Hurts the entire time. With him being a young quarterback, it's best to let him sit in the pocket and then roll out when he needs to. You're not designing a quarterback run for a young, inexperienced guy, get him on the move. Not always the best unless you don't trust your offensive line, which maybe they don't. Then they'll try rolling him out and give him a tight end as a blocker off to the side.
They do have that Kenneth Gainwell, who has shown some production in the past couple games. He kind of came in, after Sanders had a big run, and then he adds on with another big run or something like that. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. Create that ground game, and that goes for Dallas as well. Get Tony Pollard going. In my opinion, this is your number one back. Get him going, okay, and then this added on with Zeke. Wear that defense down with Pollard, and then boom, bring them Zeke too.
Because what we're finding out right now is Pollard is showing that explosiveness that Zeke had early on in his career that we haven't seen recently. I think with just what you were saying there, if you bring Pollard in early in this game, get him 50, 60 yards to start and get him some big explosive plays. Yeah. Once you bring Zeke in that's third or fourth drive after Pollard's been already going up in that defense, you bring Zeke in still early in the game. Make it your third or fourth drive. You bring him into that ball game. I think he'll get the start honestly. But if you bring him in at that stage, once that defense is ready for the explosiveness of Pollard, then you bring in Zeke and they go, well, shoot, what are we getting from Zeke this week? And then he goes and just runs you over. You're like, oh man, we ain't gonna do nothing here tonight. And, this is an Eagles defense that has been struggling with the offense looking, pretty good. The Falcons game was the Falcons game. The Falcons aren't good at football.
No.
They pulled off the win somehow against the Giants.
The Giants aren't good.
Right.
And we've seen the Giants be, I mean, they've been good a little bit, but
not enough.
Not enough.
But, as we were saying,
their only source of power is their quarterback.
I think this is a game that we're looking at Dak Prescott, 350-plus yards. That's what he needs. For him, touchdown, interception, 3-1 or 4-1 here in this game. If he throws one, he needs 3-4 touchdowns on the other side. Pollard, I need over 80 yards, and Zeke over 50. I think that's what you're looking at here, because I don't think either one's going to have over 100 in this game, but I think they combine for over 100 and potentially at least one rushing touchdown, if not two.
I mean, so you're talking about, like, I guess I could have. I guess I'll admit I was wrong about the Eagles in the offseason, because you were saying this could be like I was saying they're probably a team that's not in contention for the division, but you said they were. So and right now them and the Cowboys look like they are. So you're right, because there's question marks with Washington. They seem to be the other team. But anyway, with Dallas, they've been good so far this season. I mean, they had a close loss against Tampa Bay. They squeezed one out against the Chargers when they found a way to win that. So I guess if for me as a fan, what I'm looking for in this game, yeah, the offense. They're gonna do what they do, but the defense, they've been good so far this season despite all the injuries and COVID list guys they've had. So I want to see them continue to do good in this game here. The defense, I want to see them continue.
Got to get CD going. You got to get Gallup going as well to complement that run game. Those are your two main receivers right there: CD Lamb and Gallup.
And like I was talking on the defensive side, they get Randy Gregory back tonight. He's on the COVID list, so that definitely should help.
Just add him on with Parsons, because Parsons been tearing it up, man.
Didn't one of the offensive linemen for the Dallas Cowboys just get suspended by the league because he was bribing the drug testing agency?
Really?
This stuff happens all the time with Cowboys. I'm used to it.
I just saw that. I was like, that's hilarious, man. But
there's at least one weird story like that every year with this team. I'm used to it.
Mm-hmm. But let's make predictions here for tonight. Eagles at 1-1, Cowboys at 1-1. Mike, I'm really curious who you're going to go with here.
Well, I think I mean, if you want me to try to explain, I can. But if you want me to get well, anyway, I'm going Cowboys 28-20. I think the Eagles are going to score, but I think the Cowboys' offense is this much better, and the defense is going to be good enough to get a stop.
All right.
So
28-20?
Yep.
All right. Matt?
I like Hurts. I like Jalen Reagor. And, man, I like Devontae Smith. I got to give the edge to the Cowboys. If they keep that running attack with Pollard and then add Zeke in, plus you have CD Lamb and Gallup, I got to go Cowboys 21-14.
I'm also taking the Cowboys. I'm thinking we're getting a little bit more points. Monday night's giving us some good games already. I'm taking Cowboys 35-24.
That's a good pick.
Good pick.
I kind of just added up all the touchdowns I said they needed, so.
So you can't say they need this many touchdowns but not put it in your score.
Right. I went, I said Dak needs 4, and they're going to get 1 rushing.
So you gotta
they got to have 35.
Maybe throw a field goal in there, I don't know.
Yeah, throw a field goal somewhere. 38-24 something. All right. NFL gave us some good stuff. Hopefully we get some more good stuff. Now, college football, a game that we were talking about, upset alert. I was ringing my bell here. I really need an actual bell just to start ringing here on the show.
Yeah, because we could talk about it.
I'm sure everybody will love if I just have an actual bell destroying their eardrums here. But the NC State, the Wolfpack, took it to the Clemson Tigers, won it 27-21 in overtime. DJ Uiagalelei under 50% pass completion, under 120 yards, had an interception, had 2 touchdowns. He led the team in rushing yards as well, which is not something you want, because Will Shipley couldn't really do much on the ground, and he only had 36 yards with a touchdown. Through the year, Justin Ross, pretty much their only wide receiver we're really expecting anything out of, and he lived up to it. 8 receptions, 77 yards, and 2 touchdowns, but no one else was over 4.
You had 2 guys -1 yards receiving, so
it was just not their game offensively. And on the other side, I like Devin Leary coming into this game. I thought he was working it hot. 32 of 44, 238 yards, and 4 touchdowns for him in that game. And that's a stat you gotta love. Looking at that one, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and then Ricky Person Jr. 91 yards. Then he goes Zonovan Knight 79 yards, but then Devin Leary minus 22 yards. We won't talk about that.
No.
But he put up the yards to the air. Don't worry about the ground for him.
And NC State, I mean, we call it. I'm pretty sure every one of us called the upset here. This past Friday. But they almost blew it. They had to kick to win the game, and the guy missed it. Like, oh, no, this is going to overtime now? But I just sat there in silence that whole overtime, like, come on. Then
well, I definitely thought, I wasn't, coming out guaranteeing an upset, but because I just knew this would be a trap game, potentially, because NC State normally plays good against higher-ranked teams. Yeah. They don't always win, but they at least make it interesting.
They bring it to them.
And, you get a real question mark. You look at this game, because really the one good opponent that NC State faced was Mississippi State, and you look down at Mississippi State and you're like, well, they may not be the team that there was the big marks about early in the season. They just lost to LSU 28-25 and are now 2-2 on the season, having lost back-to-back games against Memphis and LSU now. So you look at this NC State team, it's like they really don't have any quality wins. I mean, they beat USF and Furman, one FCS and one, American Conference opponent, and they won those games handily. They put up 45 in both. They come in here against Clemson, as we were saying, it was a trap game for them, and they're going up against a Clemson team that we have seen struggle so far. I mean, this offense, besides the performance they put up against SC State and FCS team, they've sucked.
Yeah.
And
Look
at the road coming up for them.
You wouldn't even go with next week, Matt. I mean, Boston College no pushover either.
They got to go and play Pitt here in a couple weeks, and Pitt has looked.
They should beat Pitt. Come on.
They should, maybe.
Pitt's 3-1 though, so I'm not going to.
I think Boston College. This is a game that BC can win.
That's what I believe. I think so too.
That's the old Ohio State offense coordinator out there.
What, BC?
Yeah. Tom Halfley, or quarterbacks coach or something. I don't remember exactly what.
Something in the offense. He's involved there, but then. I mean, look at these games for Clemson. I mean, this should beat Syracuse, but they should beat some of these teams, and they haven't.
They should have beat NC State, if we're being honest,
yeah.
Where Clemson expects to be and the recruiting they've had and the superstars that are on this team. This is a game they should not have lost, and maybe that you look back week one, the game against Georgia, probably one, maybe they shouldn't have lost either. I mean, when a 10-3 ball game, your defense only allows 10 points, that's a game you should win.
Yeah.
And this is just one that we've seen the offense struggle every single time against an FBS opponent.
I mean, you could even say this might be just a down year for Clemson. I mean, Alabama had one a couple years ago. It might just be their turn to just have a down year and reload for next year. But it's not good right now for them. No. Their offense is pitiful to watch right now.
I mean, I guess we'll see what's up for NC State as they have LA Tech, so shouldn't be too terrible. But Louisiana Tech sometimes just love to come in and just mess up people's weekends, so we'll see what that happens. And after that, they take on Boston College, Miami, and Louisville. So potentially that three out of the next 4 games could prove a little bit difficult for this squad, and I think we're going to see what NC State is made of here in the ACC.
I'm ready to see what they do. Let's see if they can get going after this big
All right, next game up here. It took to the fourth quarter for Notre Dame to blow it open, in which they outscored the Badgers 31-3 to make this a 41-13 ball game. As Jack Cohn in his return against his former team, as he played in Chicago Soldier Field, he was okay. He was okay.
He went down and didn't play the whole second half.
It was average. It was good enough.
But listen to this, though. They were tied 10-10 the whole game, okay? And then they bring in this Drew Pine, and the guy goes off. So maybe the guy asked some questions. I still say put Cohen
Does he
in.
go off?
I mean, he went off.
6 for 8 is going off, Matt.
I mean,
81 yards and the touchdown. I mean, that's not going off. That's having a good,
That's a good line.
That's a good line. That's going off is saying someone goes like 15 to 15, 300 yards. You didn't hit the 100-yard mark, and you're saying they went off.
He changed the momentum now because they were flat a little bit, and I think he got the running game finally started going off too because Tyree was horrible at first, but
the offense had 2 touchdowns in this game for Notre Dame. The defense had the rest.
Yeah, that came in all the fourth quarter.
Graham Mertz for Wisconsin, a guy that was talking Heisman at the start of last season. 4 interceptions on 18 of 41 passing, a touchdown and 240 yards. The rush game couldn't go anywhere with Maluzzi, and this was a downright pitiful game for Wisconsin. They've lost their top 25 ranking. They're 1-2 now.
You see the interception issue with Graham Mertz. I mean, we saw it in the first game with Penn State. He's had other issues in between these 2 games. I mean, this could be another year like with Clemson. Wisconsin could have a down year. People weren't expecting this.
This was a relatively close game until that fourth quarter. I think the game was in the bag anyways. Then they just started throwing picks.
And they got to play number 14 Michigan next week. So
I mean, I think the next 4 weeks here for Wisconsin is good for them. After this Michigan game, they'll have Illinois, Army, and Purdue. I mean, Purdue's no pushover, but I think this might be a good next few weeks for them to find balance in this offense and get Mertz settled in. I mean, starting the season off against Penn State is going to rattle any team's confidence going in there.
Yeah.
Especially if you lose it in a close one. Then they go up against Eastern Michigan, really don't do anything. Then they come out here against Notre Dame, fight a close game all the way down to the end, and then completely throw it away in that final quarter. You start looking ahead like, there's some bright spots for this Wisconsin squad, and you hope after this Michigan game, which you don't think they're going to fare well in, because Michigan's looked pretty good on the season. And we'll talk that Michigan game against Rutgers on a different day here. And
Gotta save it.
right, and these next 3 games after that Michigan game could prove, very fruitful for this Wisconsin team. As, they're 0-1 in conference play. Even if you start 0-2 against Wisconsin, you have a good chance to turn it around. And after that, you really only look ahead to the number 5 Iowa matchup. The rest of these games could be winnable for them, though.
I mean, Rutgers is winnable, Northwestern's winnable. I mean, like you said, they're all winnable. So if they can get that big one against Michigan, the key is to not overlook Illinois and not overlook, who was the other one left on the schedule?
Purdue.
I mean, don't overlook those teams. You can get this big win if they're fortunate enough to do it. They're at home, so they should be able to play well and hang in that game.
In a game we're going to preview come this Friday, number 7 Cincinnati, number 9 Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. Man, what a game that's going to be, isn't it?
I mean, matchup-wise, ranking-wise, it should be a good one.
Desmond Ritter, baby. Desmond Ritter.
You're high on him right now.
Fighting Fickles going to the college football playoff.
Highest ranked Ohio team right now, so you got to be going
along with Coastal Carolina, who hasn't moved. They've been
up
winning.
1 this week, I think.
You know what?
Haven't they been 16 for a while now?
But here's what I love about this: the AP poll means nothing.
It doesn't matter.
It means the same amount as the Casual Sports Podcast top 10. Absolutely nothing at the end of the season.
But you know why they do it so early, so we all talk about it.
Right. It doesn't come until when do we get this? So week 6?
When does the first college football one come out?
I don't remember. I thought normally
somewhere
it was like week
here.
4, 5, or 6. Yeah. You get into there and they drop that top 25 ranking, and that's the only one that matters. Once we get into that, we'll talk rankings every week, and I'm sure it'll be a big topic of debate of why is this team ranked here. But you look at this Cincinnati Notre Dame game. This is Notre Dame's test right here. After that, I mean, it might be easy sailing from there on out. Virginia Tech was a ranked team, so you never know there. USC, they have their own question marks. UNC just dropped it. They're out of the top 25. Navy's not a team you have to worry about in the slightest because they don't know how to throw the football. If this was being played in the water, maybe they'd stand a chance, but it's not. You get Virginia, who is a good team every now and then, and they play some good games. Then Georgia Tech, who's been taking it to a lot of teams so far, and they picked up a big win this week, and then they finish out the season in Stanford. I mean, I think what happens here with Notre Dame, they might get worn out with the travel of this schedule, going from East Coast to West Coast, especially in this final week. They host Georgia Tech, then they head out to the West in Stanford. After coming in from Virginia the week prior.
Like, schedule-wise, what they put together here, I mean, like you said, the travel. Some of these teams were ranked, now they're not ranked, so that's also something to look out for if you're Notre Dame. It's still a tough schedule coming up for them.
It's a tough schedule, but I think a winnable one for what this team claims to be in that 9th spot.
Yeah, but we oftentimes they'll look at Notre Dame and think they are what they are, and they're not what we think they are, so we'll see.
Guess we'll have to find out here. Final game we're talking about college football for today. The Aggies of A&M Texas lost to the Arkansas Razorbacks 20-10. This was a game I was all about.
Me too.
Because the A&M Aggies, they're 3-1, but they suck. I mean, their wins are against Colorado, Kent State, New Mexico. In the Kent State, New Mexico games, you can pretty much throw out. Those are easy win games.
And Colorado
doesn't matter.
Beat them.
And Colorado almost beat them. And you look at the 2 biggest games Texas A&M has played. The offense has produced 10 points in each game.
In these big-time matchups, yeah. I mean,
this is a schedule coming up. Mississippi State 2-2 right now. It's a dangerous squad. This is a game that Texas A&M can very easily get upset in, and then they take on Alabama, who's probably going to wipe the floor with them. I mean, obviously Alabama may not be the Alabama of last season or years past,
but they're still
looking like they might still be the best team in college football when we're seeing all this up and down right now.
Yeah. So it's not good for
Texas A&M. How do you expect to win when you're pushing the running back to the end zone? I don't know if you guys saw that.
I didn't see much of this game, so I
didn't see it.
It was a big highlight. The guy was running him, and he had him, and he just pushed him. And the running back or receiver's like, okay, I'll keep going. The commentators were tearing it up. Might have to give him a special award this Friday.
Okay. Well, Zach Calzada for A&M, 20-36, 151 yards, and an interception. Isaiah Spiller with that rushing touchdown with 95 total yards in that game for him. I mean, for the running back, Isaiah Spiller did a pretty good job on his own. It's just nothing else came of the team because your offense sucks, your defense can't do much, and on Arkansas side, they didn't really have to do much either. I mean, they had KJ Jefferson, their quarterback, go 7-15, 212 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. They put up over 150 rushing yards in total. I mean, they were near the 200-yard mark, and they were dominant in that facet. You get Traylon Burks with 167 yards and a touchdown. They did what they had to, and they pulled it out. I mean, and give credit to the Razorbacks for this game. They pulled out some really gutsy performances so far against Texas, who we just saw can score a hell of a lot of points. They put up 70 this week against Texas Tech.
They give up a lot.
Is this Texas team a team we see jump back in?
Not a
top
chance.
25? Okay.
I don't think they should be there. They have looked poor on the season so far. I mean, you look. They got the ranked win against the Raging Cajuns, who aren't ranked anymore. But then you come in here this week against Texas Tech, 70-35. It was okay, but I mean, the Raiders, were 3-1, but they didn't really have any good wins. There was nothing impressive to look at out of that performance. And you look at Texas, the two big wins here besides Texas Tech, Rice and the Raging Cajuns. I don't see it just yet. We'll tell in 2 weeks. In the next 4 weeks.
TCU, yeah.
We'll talk next 4 weeks here as we normally do. They go down to Texas Christian University, the Horned Frogs. Then they host Oklahoma. Then they host Oklahoma State, who's now ranked as well after their good performance this week. And then they head out to Baylor, who just pulled off a big upset over Iowa State.
Yeah, I mean, a Baylor team that's gotten themselves back in the top 25 after a few down years. So, I mean,
and then look at after that. They then go into Iowa State to take on the Cyclones. So 5 weeks here for Texas. If they take these 5 weeks, I'd have no problem putting them in the top 20, top 15 at that point.
But there's nothing that's shown us that they will do it.
Exactly.
So
you look here against a good opponent, they lose 40-21 and showed nothing on offense.
When you want to get back in the top 25, you got to earn it. You got to go through that stretch and play your best football. Right,
but I liked Arkansas in this game, and coming up for them, they have a very difficult schedule. You look at these next 3 weeks. Week 4, these next 4 is nothing. It's their FCS, bye week basically. But they go in, they take on Georgia in Georgia this week. Then they have to go into Ole Miss and take on Ole Miss, who's ranked number 12th right now. Then they host Auburn, an Auburn team that I don't think is as good as their number 22 ranking says they are. I don't think they're a top 25 team. I think they're there right now because there's nobody else outside that deserves the spot. It's one of those things. Yes, their number says top 25, but they aren't a top team. I think we've almost reached the point in college football where the top 25 should shrink down to top 20. Because you get to a point halfway point of the season or last stretch of the season, you get those 20 and 25s, and they're switching out every single week.
Yeah.
You're putting in some Group of 5 teams, putting in teams like you said, like Auburn, that you can make an argument that they don't earn it. So some of those bottom teams you just kind of throw in there.
I mean, this is a tough road for Arkansas, but if they can pull through, they have Alabama in their final of their 2 weeks in the last stretch of the season. And that might be a game that's marked in red for both sides. November 20th, Arkansas in Alabama. And I don't think that's a game anybody looks into the season and says, this is a game to look out for. Arkansas? You kidding me? I think we said it when Texas lost to them. Yeah. I'm like, this is Arkansas. They suck. And here we are 2 weeks later, and Arkansas is the real deal. Potentially.
They are the real deal. I mean, you could make an argument right now that they're probably, ignore the rankings, like you said, we don't pay attention to that right now, but you can make an argument they're probably the best top 5, 6 team in the nation right now.
In the way they're playing.
Next week against Georgia.
Right. If they pull up against Georgia, a team that may not deserve that number 2 ranking because they really haven't shown much impressiveness, they take on a super overrated Clemson team that we found out who can't score on offense and only put up 10 points against them. Mm-hmm. I mean, we know that Georgia's defense might be there, but I don't think the offense is there, and I don't know if this is the number 2 squad. And I think Arkansas comes in here, potentially, we'll talk about it Friday, if they win this game, they're going from 8th probably up to 3rd.
They're definitely should be in the top 4. I mean, it'd be a team like Georgia's ranked number 2.
And then, they come in against Mississippi, win that one. I think they jump up to 2nd. Then they beat Auburn. You might see them overtake Alabama at that point. You looked at the ranked wins, they would have 4 in a row.
That'd be insane.
Right? And this is in the SEC, don't forget. This is a conference right now that I think is looking like the best conference in America.
Oh, this year definitely.
I don't think the Big Ten has put together the ability to compete this year. They are having some good teams, but I don't think they've had the out-of-conference slate to be able to say the Big Ten is right there with the SEC still. I think after the down year of the Big Ten, they're going to need a few to get back up there when it comes to best conference in football. We've already talked about it here on the show, but this was one of those ones. SEC, it looks like they're here. And I hate to admit that, being an Ohio State fan and a Big Ten fan, but looking at this as an analyst, this is the SEC
you're right, Alec.
year.
Right now, you have a couple teams in the Big Ten: Penn State, Ohio State, Iowa, Michigan, probably Michigan State.
Michigan State.
But every team in the SEC, it seems like almost all of them are ranked. I mean, they're just they're having a great year.
I mean, you even look at our unranked teams here in the Big Ten, though. Maryland and Rutgers.
Yeah.
Both looking good right now.
Rutgers. I mean, we'll go into that game a little bit, but, I mean, a lot of people expect Michigan to be like, all right, they're not that good. You know, they expected them to bash them. Rutgers took it to them. I mean, it was a close game, so...
All right, well, let's get into our headlines here for the day.
Yeah, I don't know much about this one, so tell me about it.
Ohio State's Kevon Pope was dismissed from the program after being taken off the field on Saturday's game. This one was kind of something that more happened on Twitter. It seemed like there was getting no national coverage of it. I mean, you can't find any videos, but apparently what had happened... Kevon Pope was trying to sub onto the field for Taraja Mitchell during like no huddle sequence. They get quick subs on and off. Mitchell waved him back off the field. Kevon Pope, who I think this is his third season, no, he's a senior linebacker for the squad, hasn't started in his 4 years here. Went over to the sideline, threw his gloves into the stands, took off his jersey and threw it away, and was walking up the tunnel. One of the teammates for Ohio State had to go grab him, pull him back onto the field before then the coaching staff took him off the field. On his Twitter, he put FUCC Ohio State. Everybody knew what he meant, clearly. And then the next day he tweets out, best luck to my teammates after being dismissed from the program.
What a big
I don't know.
temper flare up.
4 years, this was a guy coming out of high school, a 4 or 5 star linebacker, never lived up to the hype, and
just must have had it, you know?
Yeah,
one little thing happened.
He had a blowing point.
You know, he said this last night, I let my emotions get the best of me. For that, I want to apologize to my teammates, coaches, and Buckeye Nation. I made a mistake and know that I need to be better and do better. I'm going to take this time to reflect and work on my mental well-being. I mean, he has played in 33 games for 4 years, including 3 this season, but he's never been the starting guy. He's never really shown any ability to be that guy for Ohio State in a linebacker core that is, frankly, in these last 3-4 years, not been very good.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at this squad the last 4 seasons, it's a linebackers unit that's ranked in the bottom, 100 when you're bottom 50 when you're looking at linebacker units in the country, and that's not what Ohio State has been built on under Jim Tressel, at least since Urban Meyer, though. And after that 2015 championship squad, we haven't seen that from Urban Meyer or Ryan Day in terms of being able to produce linebackers.
Yeah. So.
And clearly Pope has been frustrated along with a lot of Buckeye Nation in terms of our linebacker play, and he's gone now, so next man up. I just thought that was crazy seeing that one.
You don't see that often, so you got to throw that in.
Right. You don't see this one too often either. A 35-7 lead blown from Youngstown State this past weekend as the Leathernecks to Western Illinois came into town and won 38-35 over our squad. And, well, it was not the best of games, and I think here in Youngstown we're getting a little bit too used to getting run over.
So I was at this game, and...
I'm sorry.
I mean,
I just came here.
Here's my thing, and I was telling Matt this before the show. Last week, I was betting some college football games and pro games with my dad, and I bet Western Illinois because we were going to plan on going to this game. I was like, well, I'm just going to bet them for the heck of it. They were playing Eastern Washington. They were killing Western Illinois through halftime. Western Illinois lost, but they came back. So I'm thinking, while they're coming back in this game, I'm thinking, you knew that they came back from big lead last week, and you didn't do anything to prepare for it. You're up 35-7. That's on coaching. You can blame players for not getting it done. That's on coaching. You can argue some of the play calling was bad. Didn't have the guys prepared. I mean, 35-7, nobody should blow that lead. At home, and start off conference play, that's bad.
I just want to point out this one stat of players, as you said, don't blame this on the players. It is on coaching. You look at our rush game, through 43 carries split between McLaughlin and Crenshaw, 136 for McLaughlin, 134 for Crenshaw, and 5 touchdowns. The run game for Youngstown State is phenomenal. We just don't have any pass game either. I mean, Crenshaw still went 13-22, but when your wide receivers can't make anything of it and you only get 76 yards out of that, you can't keep a balanced offense and you allow a team to hold you scoreless in the second half.
They don't show much ability to pass the ball. They didn't even do it last year. They haven't really done it so far this year. And my last thing for it, I'll hand it over to you, Matt.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's frustrating because you constantly hear about the thing, because we're on campus, we know this. Nobody goes to football games. Well, you wonder why when you blow a 35-7 lead, nobody's going to want to go watch you play. So that's you gotta. If you want people to come watch you got to do your part.
Absolutely do.
No, the next few home games for them aren't going to be any ones that people want to go to anyways. They'll take on Missouri State team that probably will come in here looking to do the same thing Western Illinois did. Then after that, South Dakota State, North Dakota State to finish out the season at home. It's not exactly what people are looking for. And then the only reason students go to those games is to see good football teams on the other side.
That's why I go to North Dakota State games when they come here. I just want to see them play.
Right, you have a chance to see players that are going to the NFL and players that
year,
in good coaching. Because the student section sits on the away side. At the end of the day, you're rooting for the team in front of you because they're the only ones playing good football in the second half.
I mean, that's why this one hurts so bad. Because to open up conference play and then you have all these hard teams coming up, you had to have this one.
A couple of years ago, we went and saw Trey Lance play.
Right.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
And we want YSU to win. YSU stuff all
we
over the
want
set.
YSU.
But they got to do their part, too.
They got to do their part.
I'm a Jim Tressel fan. He started out here. He dominated this program, and he made them what they are. And I came here because YSU was a good team in 2015.
Yeah.
I saw, I wanted to go to school with a good football program. I saw what Bo Pelini did, and I saw the team, come that close to a national championship, and I went, okay, you know what? So much for the down year after that. Maybe they had a chance. This now the third year I've been here, we've seen nothing of that. Nothing of a team that was competitive in a championship, in a playoff, at any contendership for this conference. We have not seen any of that since that run.
I caught up with one of the players. He's in one of my classes. He said they didn't have a single first down.
They didn't. Not a single first down, not a single point in the second half. After scoring 35 in the first half, you don't get 1 point.
Yeah.
It's
pathetic. He was like, they made adjustments and we just couldn't adapt to them.
And that's poor
coaching.
That's not the players.
That is coaching.
Like I said, Al,
we're not dogging the players on this. We're dogging the coaches.
100%. Like I said, you knew last week this team, even though they lost, they came back from a huge halftime deficit, and they did it again. You let them do it again. That's terrible coaching.
Well, we got to move off of that here. Final few minutes of the show here. We say so long to the Cleveland Indians at home. This is their final home game as the Cleveland Indians. Next season they'll start out as the Guardians. Currently, though, they're winning their last one in the middle of the sixth inning. They're up 5-3 over the Royals. Hopefully a game they win, but that's a team that's playing 3 different stadiums over the last 5 years, 106 years as the Cleveland Indians, and we're moving on to a new name here. And you know what? Maybe it means new things for Cleveland. We've been a team of disappointment, I think, is really what it is. A team that has kind of failed to live up to any hype and produce any talent here. It's obviously a team that hasn't won a championship since 1948. And, you look back at the Indians and you go from 1915 to now, you look at it, 2 World Series title, 28 years apart. And since then, we now hold the longest record for
World Series drought.
Title drought. Yeah, we've been in it, but it doesn't matter if you don't win it. Obviously, we've had a few great, series there in the 90s and then in the, late 10s here in the 2000s. I mean, they've been okay, but we get down to it, it's like, you know what? Maybe the name change isn't that bad. We get to look back on the history of the Indians and move ahead to a new future and hopefully a brighter future for Cleveland.
We'll see.
Hopefully.
Maybe a future that brings a championship to town because, the name change, it is what it is. At the end of the day, it's still the same team on the field. It's still the same people. It's still the same field. It's still the same fans, most of which. At the end of the day, win the baseball game. That's all that matters.
Yep. Just win.
Just win. That's going to do it here for the start of Week 3 of the Casual Sports Podcast on YSN. I'm Alec Berna. That's Matt. That's Mike. We'll see you next time. Peace out.